Okay, so you sent this in, 디아이콘스고. Kyogo Uyusi OSI.pdf, which translates to Revisiting Meta, a quality company of this era.
Yeah.
It's quite a title, huh? And today we're going to be doing a deep dive into this analysis of Meta, formerly known as Facebook.
Right.
We're going to try to figure out what this analysis is saying about Meta's current position and really what its potential future looks like based on what's being laid out here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's quite a bit packed into this analysis.
There is.
It's not just their financial position. It's also, like you said, their potential future.
Yeah.
So we're going to be looking at everything from their early days, like how they started,
Right.
all the way to their current AI strategies and how that's going to play out in the future.
Yeah. And we're going to break it all down and, make it fun to go through.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of information. So right off the bat, one of the first things this analysis points out is the rather humble origins of some of these tech giants. YouTube, for example, initially started as a way to share a Janet Jackson video.
Really?
And even Meta itself, back when it was Facebook, started as Zuckerberg's, service to look at pictures of female students.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize the beginnings were that, small and seemingly insignificant.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, right? I mean, you think about where these companies are today.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to think that they came from such simple, almost accidental beginnings.
Absolutely.
And this document emphasizes that contrast, right?
Right.
Like how these tiny sparks can turn into something that dominates the entire planet.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to this unpredictable nature of innovation,
Yeah.
Neither of them started with like a grand vision,
Right.
We're going to dominate the globe.
Right, exactly. Like, I'm sure when the first YouTube video was uploaded of, someone at the zoo or whatever, nobody thought this is going to be a multi-billion-dollar company one day.
Absolutely, and it's all about tapping into those basic human desires.
Exactly.
Like sharing and connecting, and that's what I think both of these companies did really well.
Yeah, and when we're talking about scale, this document highlights Meta's current reach as just, well, massive. I mean, they call it the world's largest advertising platform, and with good reason. You've got Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Threads. That's a lot of users.
Right. That's billions of users.
Combined monthly active user count,
Yeah.
almost 6.4 billion. To put that in perspective, TikTok has about 2.7 billion.
Wow.
Twitter, or X as it's known now, somewhere around 400 million.
That's a huge difference.
So you see what we're dealing with here?
Yeah.
That user base is the foundation of everything for Meta.
Absolutely, and this document really hones in on that.
It does.
Their entire business model revolves around that massive audience. They've got it, and now they're selling access to
It's it. That's the core.
Right. They made these strategic acquisitions, Instagram, WhatsApp, which were crucial in expanding their user base.
Totally.
And then they also have that, kind of copycat ability. Remember, they got stories from Snapchat.
Oh, yeah.
Reels are kind of like TikTok.
Totally. They saw what worked and they integrated it. Smart.
And that's what keeps them on top.
Right. You have to adapt.
Exactly.
Now, the document dives into this, and this is where it gets really interesting. The document dives into their advertising efficiency, and it's highlighted as a key strength of theirs.
Right. I'm curious to hear about this.
So the document argues that advertisers often get better conversion rates on Meta's platforms compared to, let's say, Google, YouTube, even TikTok. And the reason for this is their ID-based login system.
Okay, what's that exactly?
So because users are logging directly into Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Threads, Meta has a verified identity linked to all of their activity within their ecosystem.
Right, they know exactly who you are.
Exactly. It's different from, someone just browsing the internet anonymously.
That sense.
Maybe clicking on ads here and there. This gives Meta a much more detailed understanding of user behavior.
So they can target ads better.
Precisely, and that leads to better results for advertisers.
It's like a win-win, almost.
Almost. Now, it's not all smooth sailing, of course. Any company of this size is going to face challenges, and the document brings up a big one. Apple's App Tracking Transparency Policy, or ATT.
ATT.
Yeah, it's a privacy feature Apple rolled out. Basically, apps now have to explicitly ask users for permission to track their activity across other apps and websites. And it hit a lot of businesses that relied on that data, including Meta.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty significant shift.
Oh, it was a huge shift. And the analysis really gets into the dynamics of this, right? Apple, they make a ton of money off their search engine deal with Google.
Right.
But they didn't have that kind of agreement with Meta. So ATT came along, and suddenly the playing field was different. Meta didn't have access to the same level of user data anymore.
So how did they adapt to that?
That's the interesting part, right?
Yeah.
The document emphasizes their investment in AI. They didn't just sit back, they poured resources into AI development, and it paid off.
So even with less tracking data, they were still able to target ads effectively.
Right, exactly. It's like instead of knowing exactly what you searched for on some website, Meta's AI is analyzing your behavior within their apps. They're finding patterns, they're inferring your interests, and doing it with a surprisingly high level of accuracy.
It's kind of remarkable how they adapted.
It is, and it shows how sometimes limitations can actually drive innovation.
Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Right.
So where does the metaverse fit into all of this?
Well, the analysis actually suggests that the metaverse, at least as many initially imagined it, has kind of fizzled out.
Really?
Yeah, remember all the hype a couple of years ago? Everyone thought we'd be living in these virtual worlds by now.
Right, right.
Turns out it's a lot harder to pull off than people thought. The document points to platforms like Roblox, Fortnite, even Minecraft and World of Warcraft.
Okay, those are very established games.
Exactly. And those are really the only examples they give of virtual spaces that are truly thriving.
So what happened with Meta's big metaverse push?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And I think part of it comes back to what we talked about earlier, right?
Their reliance on mobile apps.
Exactly. They're at the mercy of the companies that control the devices and the operating systems. The metaverse, in a way, was an attempt to break free from that.
To create their own controlled space.
Exactly, a direct connection with users.
And their hardware attempts, Oculus, the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, were those part of that strategy?
Absolutely. They were trying to build the hardware that would power these new experiences.
Yeah. But the document seems to suggest that those haven't been as successful as they'd hoped.
That's putting it mildly. They faced a lot of challenges.
What kind of challenges?
Battery life is a big one. I mean, you can't have these immersive experiences if the battery dies after an hour.
Right.
And then, maybe most importantly, content.
Yeah, people need a reason to use the technology.
Exactly. And it has to be compelling. And that's something I think that even Apple's struggling with.
Interesting. So it sounds like hardware is a whole different ballgame compared to what Meta's used to.
Absolutely.
So is there any good news in this analysis?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Things take a definite turn for the positive when they start talking about generative AI. They present it as a huge opportunity for Meta.
Interesting. Tell me more.
Well, for starters, they talk about all the benefits for individual users. AI can help you with research. It can help you create content. I mean, you've seen those AI-generated videos, right?
Yeah, the ones where it looks like Will Smith is eating a bowl of spaghetti or something.
Exactly, they so. And as these AI tools become cheaper, more accessible, the document predicts a surge in user-generated content.
So more people creating and sharing stuff online.
Exactly, and that's a good thing for platforms like Instagram. More content means more engagement, which means more data for Meta's algorithms.
So users are kind of training the AI just by using the platform.
That's exactly it.
That's pretty clever.
It is, and from Meta's business perspective, there's even more to like about AI.
Like what?
It's helping them improve their core operations. Their advertising algorithms are already heavily reliant on machine learning, and AI just makes them even better.
Makes sense.
And on top of that, they're using AI to cut costs. The document even mentions they're developing their own custom AI chips.
Wow.
Which are apparently very cost-effective because they're specifically designed for their recommendation algorithms.
That's pretty impressive.
And we're already seeing AI being used in Meta's ad tools. Yeah. Automatically improving image quality, adding sound, video, things like that. Zuckerberg is a big believer in leveraging AI for cost efficiency, which is highlighted in this analysis.
So they're investing heavily in AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads us to Llama.
Llama.
It's Meta's large language model. Now, the document acknowledges that the performance of these models is constantly evolving. What's important here is Meta's strategy.
Okay, so what is their strategy with Llama?
Open sourcing.
They're making it open source.
They are.
That's a big move.
It is.
I mean, a lot of other big companies are keeping their AI models very close to the vest.
Yeah, proprietary, top secret. But Meta is going a different route with Llama. They're making it widely available to developers, to companies, and the analysis suggests that this could be a brilliant move.
How so?
Well, the more people use Llama, the faster it develops, the more innovation happens.
Right, it's kind of like a crowdsourced development process.
Exactly. And where do you think all that AI-powered content is going to end up?
On Meta's platforms. driving user engagement.
And ultimately benefiting their ad business. The document even calls Zuckerberg a Prometheus for doing this, giving these powerful tools to the world.
That's quite a comparison.
It is. Now, let's not forget Zuckerberg himself. The analysis dedicates a good chunk to his leadership at Meta, and for good reason. He's been at the helm through all of this. ATT, the metaverse, now AI.
Yeah, that's a lot of change to navigate.
It is.
And the document highlights his resilience, his ability to adapt.
Yeah, it even talks about his politically strategic decision.
Okay, I'm curious about that.
It's a whole other conversation, but the point is he's a savvy leader.
Makes sense. And they're still making money, right?
Oh, yeah. Their financial performance is strong. The document points out that they're growing. They've overcome the setbacks from ATT, even the metaverse investments.
That's impressive.
It is.
So, despite all the talk about AI and the metaverse, their core business is still pretty simple.
It is.
They sell advertising space.
That's the bedrock.
And that might not be as flashy as, some other tech companies, but it's reliable.
Exactly. They're generating cash, they're profitable, and they're continuing to grow.
Sounds like a quality company.
That's exactly what the document argues. It brings up the possibility of a TikTok ban, which, if it happens, would likely send even more users and ad dollars Meta's way.
Okay, that's interesting. I hadn't considered that.
And then you have the potential monetization of Threads and WhatsApp. That's a lot of untapped potential. The document actually aligns Meta with all the classic indicators of a quality company: cash generation, return on equity, growth potential.
And they've consistently met those criteria.
They have. Now, what's really interesting is the argument that while there have been all these social media platforms popping up over the years, things are kind of converging back towards Meta.
What do you mean?
Well, the analysis emphasizes that social networking is inherently sticky, meaning people tend to stick with the platforms they're already using. Unlike, say, a search engine, where you might only use one main one, people use multiple social networks.
True. I use Facebook, Instagram, and even Threads sometimes.
Exactly.
It's hard to imagine completely replacing any of them.
That's the point.
So Meta's got this strong hold on the social media landscape.
Yeah, and the document specifically mentions Instagram as being incredibly difficult to replace.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a visual platform, and people have built their whole online identities there.
It's more than just pictures, though. It's the community, the connections,
Right.
and it all comes back to AI. The document really hammers this home. Meta's AI strategy is all about content, about fueling the creation and consumption of content.
Okay, so they're not just focused on the technology itself, they're focused on how it can be used to create more engaging experiences on their platforms.
That's it. They're betting on the idea that lower costs and faster speeds for AI-driven content creation are going to lead to entirely new forms of content, new ways of consuming it.
Like AI-powered influencers.
Maybe, or maybe even more immersive metaverse applications. It's hard to say for sure, but the document suggests that Meta is positioning itself to be at the forefront of this evolution.
And giving away Llama is part of that.
Exactly.
They're essentially encouraging user-generated content, driving up engagement, and making sure that their platforms are the main destinations for this new wave of AI-driven content.
It's a bold strategy, and it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out. Now, the analysis doesn't just focus on Meta in isolation. It also looks at the broader competitive landscape.
Okay, what are some of the key takeaways there?
Well, they mention platforms like OnlyFans, which is actually incredibly profitable, but relies heavily on Instagram and Twitter for promotion.
Really?
It shows you how interconnected the digital ecosystem is. And then there's Twitter, or X as it's called now. The document doesn't shy away from the issues they've been having.
Yeah, everyone knows about the chaos over there.
Exactly.
User exodus, internal struggles, the whole 9 yards.
And the document sees this as an opportunity for Meta. They're positioning Threads as a potential alternative.
A more neutral ground.
Exactly. A place where people might feel more comfortable sharing and connecting.
But isn't it hard to beat the original?
Oh, absolutely. It's always tough to unseat the incumbent, but the current situation with Twitter is unique, to say the least.
It's definitely a window of opportunity for Threads.
And then there's WhatsApp.
What about WhatsApp?
The document points out the potential for AI-powered features within the app.
Okay, but isn't WhatsApp just a messaging app?
That's what we think of it as now.
Right.
But remember, large language models are basically just really advanced chatbots.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
And WhatsApp has this massive global user base, especially in developing countries.
So they could integrate AI-powered features directly into the app.
Exactly. Things like automated customer service, AI-driven personal assistance.
That's huge.
It is. It could change how people interact with businesses, how they get information, how they manage their daily lives.
Wow. So Meta's not just a social media company anymore.
That's the big takeaway here. They're becoming a content ecosystem powered by advertising and increasingly by AI. They're competing with TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, all of them. And they're betting big on the future of AI-driven content.
And if this analysis is right, they're in a very strong position to win that bet.
So to sum it all up, the analysis paints a picture of Meta as a resilient, adaptive, and ultimately quality company.
Yeah, they've faced challenges, but they've overcome them.
They've got a strong core business, and they're making smart moves in AI.
They're not just riding the waves, they're shaping it.
And that brings us to a final thought for you, our listener.
Okay, hit me.
Meta is giving away Llama, one of the most advanced AI models out there, completely free. What are the long-term implications of that?
That's a really good question. I mean, it could democratize AI, make it accessible to everyone.
Right. But are there potential downsides?
There could be. We're entering uncharted territory here. What happens when everyone has access to these powerful tools?
It's something to think about. It's about the balance between progress and the potential for unforeseen consequences.
Yeah, the ethical considerations are huge.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Meta. We hope you found it informative.
Absolutely. It's a company worth watching.
It certainly is.
Yeah.